Hello, I'm James Stewart. I'm a Global Client Technical Advisor at IBM. I'm going to talk to you today about geofencing. And this is a demo which makes use of the Watson IoT platform and geospatial service, as well as a couple of other services that we'll get into, all running on IBM's Bluemix platform. What we have here is the actual recipe that I followed. You can find it quite easily on DeveloperWorks. And if you search within DeveloperWorks for geofencing, it should be one of the first hits that you get. This recipe contains all the information you need in order to create the application that I'm going to show you, from setting up a Bluemix and Mapbox account all the way through deploying the relevant services. So we make use of the Watson IoT service, we make use of the geospatial service, and also tools like Node-RED, which is a graphical development interface. We also have things like CloudAnt NoSQL database being used. A couple of things that caught me out first time round, which are worth mentioning. You will need to have the Bluemix command line installed on your workstation, and also the Cloud Foundry command line. Now, the service itself, as I say, makes use of a number of microservices that run on the Bluemix platform. So here's my Bluemix dashboard. Not all of these are being used for this particular application. So if I just point out the key things, we've got a CloudAnt database, we've got our geospatial service, our Watson IoT service, and then we also have Node-RED as well. Now, the actual application that you'll push out to Bluemix when you run through the recipe actually runs in two parts. We've got the server and the client. And let's just take a quick look at the server. So this is really the graphical interface for the server portion of the application. And this enables us to build geofences. Now, I live in a small town in Derbyshire. It's called Belper. I'm sure not many of you will have heard of it. But what I've been able to do is create a geofence quite easily using a palette, which I'll show you in just a second, around my house. And then as I make my regular journey to see my client up on the Wirral, you'll see that I've added a number of geofences based on certain areas that I might pass through along the way. Now, as I said earlier, it's quite easy to create geofences using this service. There's a palette that we can use in order to very quickly draw new geofences, and we can give them a name, we can specify some rules in terms of what happens on entry and exit, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my latest project data is loaded. I'm going to start the geospatial service, which should just take a few seconds here. And then I'm going to set the geofence regions before I show you the client application. Okay, so this is the client application. It runs on a browser on my iPhone here. I'm just going to refresh this. And as you can see, the first thing that it asks me to do is to give it a unique ID for the device. And this will now start to send the GPS coordinates through the Watson IoT platform. And there's a Node-RED flow, which I'll show you in a minute, that actually processes this information. So what we should see in just a second is that a message has been published. That's gone through the flow. It's captured in the CloudAnt database as well for our records. And we've had a notification to say that I am in JS Home, which is the name I gave to the region around my house. So let's go back and take a quick look at the Node-RED flow. So for those of you who haven't seen Node-RED before, it really is a great tool. It's open source, so it's quite easy to get hold of, but you can also run it within the Bluemix platform. It allows you to very easily drag and drop these nodes onto the palette, and then you can actually double click on a node to configure it. So for example, we have the IoT device, so this is using an MQTT broker through the Watson IoT platform to pick up the data from my phone running the app. And we also have the information that's coming from our Geofence service, again, feeding the information from the geospatial service and Mapbox through the Watson IoT platform and into this flow. And then you can see that there are some functions that take place in order to record events in the Cloud Ant database. Now, if we take a quick look at the Cloud Ant dashboard as well as the standard reports that you'd expect to see, it does actually have quite a nice geospatial index service. And what I did the other day when I made my usual journey from Belper up to the Wirral was leave the application running on my phone so that you could actually see how the route that I took to work was captured in this database. What I'm going to do is just zoom out a little bit, because one thing that I wasn't sure would work, but I was actually quite pleased it did, was that I actually created some geofences in the building. So this grey shape you can see here is the actual building that I was working in that day. And as well as being able to see the route that I took in to actually pull into the car park here, the building is split up into wings. So I created a geofence around the west wing, the east wing, the reception area here, and also the south wing. And you can actually see that I spent a bit of time in reception. I spent some time sat in the south wing, maybe having a cup of coffee, catching up with some colleagues, and then I had a few meetings over the course of the day in the west wing as well. Now, obviously, geofencing is not the most accurate, but because this is a rather large building, the app was actually able to track me through the wings, and I got the notification on the mobile app to say which wing I was in at that particular point in time. So do try this out. I'm not a developer, but it was very easy for me to pick up the recipe and actually run through this. It took me probably about an hour to get it all working properly. And now from there you can think about how you might want to tweak this, generate some new reports. Everything's captured in the Cloud Ant database, which is great. That means you can use it in potentially other applications or visualize it in different ways. And also, I think, in terms of some ideas around how this could be used, I'm looking at using this for a project with my client around sort of tracking how people use the building and facilities in the local area. It could also play quite a major role in retail scenarios where you want to track shoppers or consumers' journeys, and maybe provide push notifications to them with special offers and that sort of thing. But it could also be used around things like asset tracking. So I hope this has been of use. I'm hoping to make some more videos in the not too distant future, so please do look out for those, and feel free to contact me if you want any further information.